Okay, so recently I played through the betas of both Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 and more recently, the finals. I've actually already released a video on both of those, so if you want to check out either video, be sure to check the links that are on the screen now, or check out my channel. With that being said, I truly believe that the finals is better than Call of Duty, although that totally depends on your personal preference and the style of gameplay that you prefer. And that's what this video is for. Let's go over some comparison points as to why the finals and Call of Duty could appeal to different audiences, and then finally finish off with why I believe that the finals is better. Remember to subscribe if you're enjoying this sort of content. I've got much more of it on my channel which you can check out below. Remember to subscribe and press the notification bell so you know about every single upload. And with that being said guys, let's get right into the video. So what I did for the last gameplay breakdown is I effectively broke down both games into multiple different categories and gave a point to each game depending on which category I voted was better. The game that had the most points by the end of the video effectively won and was the better game in my opinion. I'm not going to be doing that here because these games so clearly cater to two completely different audiences, so I'm just going to be stating the differences in this video so that you guys can decide for yourselves on which one that you prefer, and I won't say my personal opinion until right at the end of the video. With that being said, let's get into the first section of these games, which is gunplay styles. So if you've played the finals, you'll very much know that it was made by ex-DICE developers, DICE of course being the company that recently developed Battlefield and has done for years. You can really tell after playing the finals that they've really carried through a lot of that Battlefield DNA over to this new IP. Gunplay does feel very heavily influenced by Battlefield, so if that's your cup of tea, know that it won't feel quite as heavy as the new Call of Duty games, but it will have a certain lightness to it that does add speed and a sense of pace to the game, but it does leave combat feeling ever so slightly lackluster if you've played the newer Call of Duty games, which then leads us into our second game, which is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. These guns, obviously, if you've seen my beta review, don't quite have the same kick as the guns in Modern Warfare 2, but they do have significantly more of a kick than the guns in the finals. Each gun does feel quite heavy and old-fashioned, and obviously that's what the guns in the finals are, but the games in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 really do feel old-fashioned. If you prefer that your games make you feel the guns being fired every time you press the trigger, I'd highly recommend you play Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 on the PS5 as opposed to playing the finals, just because the finals doesn't quite have that satisfying recoil every time you shoot a gun. However, what I will say is the finals gunplay feels much faster, despite having a much higher time to kill just through the nature of its arena shooter style. And that actually takes us into our next section, round progression. So what I mean by round progression is it's how the games play out over a match. In Call of Duty, this is much more of a classic arcade shooter, so games such as Team Deathmatch, Control, Capture the Flag, Domination, Kill Confirmed, Hardpoint, you name it, Call of Duty's got it and pretty much invented it. You know what you're getting with Call of Duty. So let's go on to the finals to see what you can expect there. Final works very differently than you'd expect from a normal arcade shooter, mainly because it isn't one. Finals is an arena shooter, which actually allows it to take full responsibility and make full use of its insane destruction mechanics. That being said, it does also mean that it caters to a very specific audience, because with a high time to kill and team play being crucial, this is a game you want to take your best tactical game into as opposed to just madly shooting at everything that moves, because you're not actually after other players in this game unless you're playing a very certain round of the game. How a round of the finals works is you'll start off by opening a vault and then taking the contents of that vault to a cache out point before defending the content of that cache out point for several minutes in order to gain access to the cache inside, and then it's the team with the most cache at the end of the round that will win. If that sounds appealing to you, or if any sort of domination or capture the flag mode is appealing to you, the finals actually might be better suited to you than Call of Duty, because every element of the finals design caters well and truly towards capturing an objective, from destruction to the different classes of player, to the different weapons and the gadgets. I would say personally that that's why the finals click so well with me. The game engine really does allow you to sandbox your way through this game in any way that you please. For example, I spent most of my time knocking down buildings in order to bring the cash out points down to my level and to catch unsuspecting teams unawares. So those are the differences there, but let's go forward to a slightly more debatable topic: maps. The debate on maps is actually more complicated than you might first realise. Sure, Call of Duty's map total indefinitely defeats the finals, with Call of Duty having many established maps over several games, and even Modern Warfare 3 having access to many maps from the old 2009 game Modern Warfare 2. The finals only has a handful of maps, but the difference is that those maps are almost totally random, meaning that different sorts of factors can come into play to really alter each map as you play. The destruction is one of those factors, but also there are randomised elements that come into play before you even gone into the map. Those can be things such as part of the map being under construction, raised platforms being present or even moving platforms, or dynamic weather effects, which completely change how you play, as if you're playing during a fog in the night time, visibility is equally as low as you'd expect it to be. Fast forward to Call of Duty, however, and I just think that the sheer difference between each map does make probably more of a difference than the 3 or 4 maps you get in the finals just being slightly randomised every time. One thing I will say though is that the ability to completely chop and change the maps in the finals can mean that each match can play out totally differently depending on the style of play that you opt for, or even the style of play that your enemies opt for. Put it this way, if there were 4 teams all playing in completely different styles, you can really have a game play out in a multitude of different ways depending on which team is most dominant. For example, one team just chose to snipe everyone in this one game, so the rest of the teams took to charging through buildings and then eventually RPGing the building they were on in order to completely break them off the roof, and then charging in and knocking down the rest of the buildings from the ground level. The different ways that each map can play out in the finals really does mean that this game will appeal to those who enjoy a sandbox-like game, such as Halo Infinite, and that's actually the game that I can probably compare this to the most of all modern shooters, because there really is nothing else like it. All in all, whether you prefer the maps from the finals or Call of Duty completely depends on your preference for round progression and how the game plays out. That's really all I've got to say on this one, so let's move on to the graphical style possessed by both games. I'm sure that'll make a difference for some people. Okay, so if you've seen my Call of Duty video, then you might have seen that I was highly critical of Modern Warfare 3's graphical style. I called it bland, all almost completely brown, and a heavy step down from its predecessor Modern Warfare 2. The one thing I'd actually like to add to that statement is that I do still believe that Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is a decently good looking game, especially compared to a multitude of the shooters that have released in the last couple of years. The good thing about Call of Duty is that its base engine is so far ahead of the competition that its graphical fidelity almost makes up for the colour palette that's on show here, and that's a very boring one. The thing about the finals though is that its colour palette is very bright, almost to the point where it's cartoonish, although it does still go for that realism. If we're going to call it by which game was more realistic, we'd go for Call of Duty every time, because no shooter looks as realistic as Call of Duty does, especially at the moment. The finals though, that's a completely different story. The finals is a much more colourful, much more exciting looking game than Call of Duty. And that's because the multitude of character customizations that each player can take advantage of do stand out against any background that you could put them against, and that's especially true with the finals having a hybrid of both bright, colourful backgrounds, greystone buildings and nature. The finals' art style just stands out so clearly to me in a genre that's mainly filled with realism and occasionally dull colours. The finals is kind of like the Fortnite of first-person shooters. I mean that in a complimentary way. Its cartoonish art style really stands out from the crowd, and that goes as far as its character customization as well. There are so many options that each player can choose, and so many things to unlock, that you can imagine players grinding away to unlock every clothing item. It's actually somewhat striking to say that its customization system is better than Call of Duty's, and that's bizarre because the finals is a free-to-play game, whereas Call of Duty? No chance. Call of Duty is a full-price game with a customization and battle pass system of a free-to-play game, whereas the finals system seems infinitely more fair. That's actually one thing that I would say. The monetization in the finals is most definitely better than anything you'll get in Call of Duty, as it's been shown so far anyway. Obviously we don't know much about how this game's going to turn out as it's only had a beta so far, but as it develops we'll keep you updated on this one, because free-to-play monetization is notoriously shaky. Anyway, let's head on to our last category, genre advancement. Okay, so genre advancement is a bit of a dicey one, mainly due to the fact that these games sit within entirely separate genres, and both of these genres have entirely different parameters in which they could expand. But I will say this, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is far less of an advancement than an active step back for the first person shooter genre. It charges $70, and that is for a game that is almost an exact repeat and reskin of old maps and very little new changes. Put it this way, if a game was originally designed to be a $20 DLC tacked on to a year-old game, and then was eventually developed into a $70 DLC, if it was anything else apart from Call of Duty, and keep in mind that this DLC has almost nothing added on that wouldn't or couldn't have been added to the original game, if it was any other game apart from Call of Duty, would we really be singing its praises and telling people to buy it? The answer? No, of course we wouldn't. So why do that here? We shouldn't, and we're not going to. And that's exactly why my point for genre advancement, if there was a point, would definitely go to the finals. Because that game feels new, fresh, and really refreshing for an already dying arena shooter genre. If Hyperscape had been updated regularly, it could have looked something like this. The finals is a final example of a game that taps into its target audience, knows the modern landscape of shooters, and aims to expand on that in any way it possibly can. It looks in all the areas that Battlefield doesn't quite push hard enough, especially 2042, and basically makes those failings, improves them, and creates a game out of them. This game is everything that people wanted from 2042, and it could also be what you're missing if you're a Call of Duty fan looking for something a bit newer and a bit different. I've only played the beta, and I can unquestionably say that when the finals does release into 1.0, I'm going to be screaming its praises from the rooftops, and I think a lot of other people will be too. And it even seems that a lot of people are, as this game has reached over 250,000 active concurrent users, which is almost unheard of for a beta. I actually want to know what you guys think, so please let me know down in the comments whether the finals would appeal to you more or Call of Duty, and also why. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on these games as well. With that being said though, please remember to subscribe, let me know what you thought of the video down below, check out any of my other videos if you enjoyed this one, remember to put the notification bell on and like it if you enjoyed, and with that being said guys, I'll catch you all on the next one. Bye bye.